Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, love, laugh, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Fay on ubnradio.com.
And welcome. My name is Dr. Marissa, and you're listening to my weekly talk radio show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. And it's a show about hope and happiness. So there's no gossip, no scandal, and no K-words, Kardashian talk. I want you to focus on your own reality show and not someone else's, and how to be happy 88% of the time. I'm your host, Dr. Marissa Pay, and thank you to my station managers, Tony, Paul, Brett, and sound engineers, Garrett, Carlos, and Mia at both my UBN and KCAA NBC News Radio broadcasting families, and my assistant producer, Jarvis. I almost called you Jared. Jarvis Essex. And today, my beautiful staff interpreter, Sharon Pierre-Lewis. Yeah. Yes, it's another Radio for Our Deaf series. Thanks to the cameras in my studio. And today, lots of shout outs, and I want to call them peace outs, but nobody in the studio wanted me to, but a special shout out. And here's an interesting one. Sandra Kalunga from the DMV office. Yes, I had to get a new driver's license because I had a birthday, even though I'm ageless. Jerome, my beautiful stylist who keeps me coiffed. Jackson and all the good-looking security men at the Sunset Hour Studios, and my valet guy, DJ Bridge. So a shout out to you. First, let's take a very deep breath in and release some healing thoughts and blessings and wishes to those who have been impacted with the recent earthquakes around the world, and another breath of power and love to calm Ferguson and all the places where hatred is really rearing its ugly head. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I believe, and that the debate that continues across all media is just fueling the polarization. So we're just going to focus on the power of our healing breaths and good thoughts out. And I'm so grateful that I get to focus attention on the positive with my show and the good news, and not be part of the media that tends to be what Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith calls the weapon of mass distraction these days. If we turn our energy to what is right with people, places, and things, more will follow. So today, I get to focus on one of my favorite topics, sex. Yes, it is that time of the month. I don't know if we put Marvin Gaye on, but it is Sexual Healing with Dr. Marissa every last week of the month on my show. And this is with Dr. Marissa, the new Asian Dr. Ruth, because I'm determined to make pleasure a G-rated and a G-spot rated topic. Why? Because it's important to heal from sexual abuse, and I have talked about that on the air. I have guests who come on and talk about that. And one of the things that I realized in doing shows and focusing on the dark side of sex is how much it is needed for us to focus on the positive or the light side of sex. It's important to heal. It's important to make sure we don't repeat those abuses of the past and the patterns that they seem to hold in families. But it's so important to talk about the positive side, because I don't think we do a good job explaining to our kids, or being comfortable talking about it with our friends, or comfortable talking about it with our partners. So that's why every last week of the month we do Sexual Healing with Dr. Marissa, because I am really wanting to break the statistic that up to 80% of women in this world fake orgasms still. don't know that there's more than one way, that there's 11 kinds of orgasms. I am, really want this last week of the month to be a comfortable, tasteful and comfortable way to talk about pleasure and to talk about the good things around sex. And normally I have my co-host, Dr. Robin Milhausen from Canada. She's a professor at University of Guelph. She's on vacation. So I thought this week I would bring someone special to you who's actually a special person in our household because it's my daughter's favorite middle school teacher. If any of their other teachers are listening, don't take it personally. He's also on the show, so we call him favorite. But truly, he has brought a lot of love and light to our home. They love coming home to tell me about their science class. And then he also gets to do sex education in the middle school system. And so he wrote a fabulous book that we're going to talk about today called They Asked You What? And it is a compilation of all the questions that he has gathered in teaching. And a little bit about David. He is a classic baby boomer, child of the 50s, grew up in the 60s, did some scary stuff in the 70s. Got married, had 2 daughters in the 80s. He spent nearly 20 years in the aerospace materials industry, has a master's, and then made the best career move of his life, getting into teaching science and health sex education. So we're very, very blessed to have David Beck on the air with us to the studio today. So welcome to you.
Thank you. It's really exciting to be here.
And you had a box on your desk, and it had slits of paper, and they didn't have to put their name on it, and they could ask any question they wanted to you about sex. And it's all covered in this book. I'm going to pick out a couple of my favorite ones, and then I'm going to ask you to also. Okay, so let's see. My favorite one, I think, is, will my penis break?
Yep. They worry about that a lot. Guys do.
And let's see. The one that was a little bit, the normal ones we hear about. Someone told me that if you masturbate, you will go blind and grow hair on your hands.
That's still out there.
Still out there. That's an old one. Okay, now my sound engineer and my assistant producer are laughing. Okay, if you cut your penis in half, will it still work? Yep. Okay, that was another one of my favorites.
We spend a fair amount of our life stressing about the penis.
Yes, it does look like that. Another favorite, what happens if my penis snaps? There's another penis one. And so this book, you compiled all of these into several categories. I love this. Parts, plumbing, and puberty, masturbation, conception, contraception, and birth, sexually transmitted diseases and infections, various sex acts, anal sex, sexuality, and all the other strange, freaky, and sometimes sad stuff they ask, sexual harassment and sexual assault, and then some questions that stand on their own. So my first question is, why did you do this? Why is it important to have a book like this? I know you're preaching to the choir, but I would like my listening audience to understand the motivation of this.
The idea was kicking around the back of my head for a long time, just because it was so amusing. It is so amusing to do this unit for the 2 weeks at the end of the year. I describe it as having 2 weeks of sore stomach muscles as you try not to burst out laughing at, what are some cases very serious questions and otherwise rather frivolous questions that they're seeing that they can get away with. But either way, it's fascinating. At lunchtime, I would share some of the choice ones with my colleagues, and we'd all enjoy that. And I was talking about it with my wife. I talked about it with some concerned parents that there's just so much out there. The kids are so immersed in a sexual culture unlike any seen before. Those of us who grew up baby boomers and things like that, thinks we pioneered the sexual revolution. And I often point out to the kids that nobody invented sex and everybody thinks they invented sex. But still, with all that however hip you think you are, your kids are growing up immersed in a sexual culture unlike any ever seen. And whatever your ethics, whatever your religion, whatever your feelings about the topic, you need to prepare your kids for that world. because that is objectively, without passing judgment on it, the world they are entering. And it seemed like it was something to do. In between the humor of the questions and me developing some things I felt I really wanted to say about the topic, it seemed like something I needed to do.
Right. And saying something about it, and you know, if you've been listening to me for a while, you're going to have to hear this again. But I think what I love about this book is that it's almost a jump-off point that you can have to talk to your kids. We're better than our parents were. And every time I bring this topic up, everybody goes, oh, yeah, you know, my parents didn't tell me anything. I was surprised when I had my period. I thought I was dying. I didn't know anything because my parents didn't talk about anything. So we're definitely better than that in this generation. But I think for the most part, we still haven't come as far as we need to, because most of the parents that I know, and myself included before I got immersed in all of this, was, I would say, don't have sex until you're married or until you find someone that you fall in love with that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. But if you do, be safe. Use a condom. And then that's it. And I've been taking this, asking people that I bump into, what kind of conversations do your parents have with you, and that's it. Yeah. You know, and to be fair to the parents, the kids really don't want to talk about it. I know my
they don't want to talk about it with you.
They don't want to talk about it with you.
Right.
Exactly. And it's like, you know, la 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 la. Can we talk about something else? What I found, though, is if I say it enough, or if I make sure that I say something like, you know, you can talk to me about anything, right? And I say it over and over and over, it does allow for some room to, you know, okay. And so we've been starting to talk about sex, when to have sex. Last week, my 16-year-old was on the show, one of your favorite students, Chloe, and her tennis partner, and I forgot to mention they won second in the league finals last year. But Renee and Chloe talked about, you know, when and how, when should kids start having sex? And they came right out and said, not in high school. And I know that one of the reactions that I had from some of the questions was, they're not ready. I mean, we can laugh at their questions, right, but when the questions come down to, can I, you know, when is it true? Oh, there was one in there. Is it true that if I swallow my boyfriend's semen, that it's good for my teeth? Because that's what I've been told.
Right.
You know, and my reaction was, wow, and yours as well. You know, boys will tell you.
Boys will lie to have sex. All right. We may not be proud of it, but you know, they on the Robin Williams tribute last night, they had one of his bits where he said that God gives you a penis and a brain and only enough blood to run one at a time. And at this age in middle school, the penis starts doing a lot of the running of the operation. Right.
So it is so regardless and regardless of religious.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize that. And I understand how a lot of parents feel that talking about this, discussing this, runs counter to what I feel religiously. And my strongest message, one of my strongest messages, is that it doesn't matter. You can teach your kid whatever the best religious values you have, whatever the best secular values you have. It is not hypocritical to prepare them for the world that they're living in.
Right.
And this is the world that they're living in. You're not telling them go out and have sex.
Correct.
You're telling them this is what the real world of sex involves.
Yes.
And one of the themes that runs through my presentation in sex education, what we call family life education in Los Alamitos School District, is that until you are ready to deal with all these things. And a lot of smart kids will say, yeah, okay, I'm going to go get condoms. I'll even go out somewhere and get birth control. and things like that. And they need to understand that those two things are not necessarily the same. Condoms is not the same as birth control.
Right.
They'll go out and do those intelligent things, but still being kids, they aren't even thinking about, okay, so what if it goes wrong, right? What if the birth control fails and I do get pregnant? What if the condom breaks and I do catch something, right? They are not ready to deal with that.
Right.
And they are not able to talk to their parents, but not, I mean, some can, certainly.
Right.
But the ones that are doing this very often are not. And that's the thing where it breaks down for a young kid.
Yeah.
Is, and that part of their brain that thinks about long-term consequences isn't done yet.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Right.
Girls, it starts finishing up. Yeah, the sharp girls, you can see it's already kind of there by 8th grade. But most of them, it's in their later teen. Guys don't get that part of the brain working until well into their 20s.
Yeah. And that's so important to have that discussion with the kids because there is pressure. Boys will lie. Girls will lie. They will say I'm on the pill and they're not. And so and here's the other thing that I think has shifted too. I was shocked by your Center for Disease Control statistics. So whereas in our generation, maybe the you don't want to do that because you're going to get pregnant, right? And now it's okay, it's still that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, 1 out of 4 teenagers
By the time they leave high school.
Okay, listen up. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to, take my advice, I'm not using it, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. We're on our special Sexual Healing with Dr. Marissa episode. I have teacher and sex ed and author David Beck with me, and I'm just about to tell you one of the most important statistics that I was not aware of that made me sit up and say, dang it, we have to be really much better about talking to our kids because it's not about pregnancy anymore. 1 out of 4 kids in America before they leave high school contract a sexually transmitted disease.
Make it more specific. It's 1 out of 4 girls.
1 out of 4 girls.
And you have to assume that it applies to the guys.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind is still by the time they graduate high school, not really much more than half of them have had sex.
Okay.
So that means half the kids that are having sex have an STD. All right? So, and this is one of the key themes. If you're not ready to deal with all this stuff, you are not ready to have sex.
Yeah.
And
that's beyond religious. That's
right.
Beyond moral. That is one of those, if you want hope and happiness in your life,
right.
and you want to have a good start, and you want to be able to not have a whole lot of regrets built up, then sex is one of those areas. It's one of the key areas about being human. So if we're going to do it emotionally and physically, let's understand what all needs to be understood before we have it.
There's nothing more moral than the truth. If you hate things like abortion, you should love this topic. This is what prevents the need for abortion. All right?
Yeah.
So any of those concerns that people have about that, you really examine it and realize that truth is love, and that's what you're imparting.
I asked you to give me some of your favorite questions in there. And by the way, on the bottom of it, it says, have you discussed this with your parents or not? I'm guessing
almost never checked,
almost
but
never
sometimes.
Checked. Okay. So one in here is, I caught my parents having sex one time, and I didn't know what to do or say. What should I have done?
That's a surprisingly common thing in people's lives. Like that. A lot of people have had that happen.
Right.
And it happens. It's kind of one of the reasons people tell you to knock on the door. But you can just stumble into that situation. I did once with my parents, and it is horribly embarrassing, especially at that teen age. All you can do is say, excuse me, leave the room, and hopefully realize that someday you'll all laugh about it.
Right. And know that that's probably how you came out to be.
So, yeah.
I know.
Right. That's how you got there. Be glad your parents still dig each other enough to do that.
Exactly.
All
Exactly.
right.
It's a good thing.
Because they don't all.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And exactly. Part of my show as well on, why we don't have sex more often and how good it is as a tool for good relationships. That's another episode. But I think that highlights another reason why we have to talk about and why I do this once a month is if we keep it in the dark, if we keep it as so embarrassing, our kids will learn, and they learn from the worst possible source, which is their peers. And
and online porn.
And online porn, thank you.
Again, not a campaign against porn, but young guys are forming some very twisted ideas about what girls want in the way of sex.
Thank you.
From the porn they watch.
Yes. Past guest Davy Ward for Sexual Healing, she talked about the whole, what you see in porn and what girls like and how, they like to be violated. That is not true.
Yeah.
But if a young boy is watching that to get the lesson,
yeah.
And what is it? The number one Googled term?
It's various sexual terms. It's boobs, vagina. You just run down the list of sexual parts and acts.
And that's like the number one.
Yeah.
Those are the number one search terms, and so they're getting the information.
Yeah, it's 5 keystrokes, and you're looking at free online hardcore porn.
Yeah. So if that's not the education that we want our kids to have, if even, yes, you say here for the parents, make sure it's restricted, make sure that there's controls. But for me,
that the kids will often
curiosity
hack.
right, and they're smart kids. Yeah. So for me, it's always about balance. So, okay, you can get your information from there, and then I'm going to sit down and tell you that sex is beautiful. And it is one of the most wonderful feelings. Orgasms are a blessing of life. And I love this one question that a girl put in. You said, the wisest question you've been asked, why do you only teach us about the bad things that come from sex? And we're never taught about the good things that come from it. How do you expect us to learn it on our own? And I love that because
I do too.
It's true. We do talk about, you don't want to get pregnant, or you don't want to, and I just said, you don't want this sexually transmitted disease. Absolutely. And at the same time, it is a beautiful thing. And I know that the way I was brought up on it led me to be a very normal woman in her ageless time that says, I'm dirty down there, I smell down there. There's a comment about, why does it smell like fish or chicken? And that kind of, women are distasteful. Their anatomy's distasteful. They're not pretty down there. It all starts from this erroneous education, or, and it's giggled at, and it's not talked about, and it's not. I love the factual way that you go about answering the questions, and you're very particular about not elaborating on the how-to.
Yeah, what the kids would like is a how-to course, and both by policy and by a lot of deep thought, it can't be a how-to class at that age, but it is a what it is class, and we try to dispel a lot of these misapprehensions that the kids have. Again, one of the drivers for this, with both the fact that I raised 2 daughters, and some thoughts that my wife had on that, and a couple parents talked to me over the years, it said, I'm concerned about both the messages girls are getting and what boys expect of girls nowadays. Again, largely based on what they see on porn.
Right.
And so that was kind of one of the drivers on this, is to make guys, and it's really hard in the culture that we're in.
No
but
pun
make
intended.
Them, yeah, all the time. But
yeah, I saw a bunch of questions on that. Like, what do I do?
Yeah, it's difficult to get guys to step back and kind of put girls back on a pedestal a little bit. And yet that's kind of what we want to do. And, and just if nothing else, to respect them. Now, girls can be just as strange sexually as guys can.
Right.
And more power to them. But nobody wants to be abused.
Right.
And nobody wants to be humiliated.
Yeah.
And a lot of what is coming at girls from guys sexually is abusive, humiliating sex based on what they see in porn.
Right.
Not necessarily because they think of it as that way, but they just kind of think that's the way it is.
Yeah, that was the most disturbing question that I read in here was the Superman question. Which is,
that one's tame compared to some of them that are out there on
really?
Urban Dictionary. So.
Yeah, it just really brought home the need to put back on the pedestal that this is a very beautiful act, that it can be absolutely wonderful when two people care about each other. And
but no matter what, it can have life-changing consequences.
Right. And unless you are ready to face the consequences, as you say, and take the responsibility for it, you probably should wait. And I think that's a great message. It's not, no, you can't, blah, blah, blah.
It's anything but anti-sexual.
Exactly. Did you ever get flack from any of the parents? Or?
Remarkably, none.
Good.
That's
because we live in the best schools.
I mean, the parents have the right to excuse their kid from the sex ed unit. I had one this year. I hadn't had one for several years before that. Never more than one a year, and very rarely. Yeah. And I totally respect their wish to do that. Right. Most of them are taking a different approach that they feel more comfortable with. But like I say, one of the drivers for the book was actually some serious conversations with some mothers, particularly mothers of daughters, about what they were seeing in their daughters' lives. Right. And making sure that girls understand their place and their rights in this. And there's a lot of centering on girls nowadays, and probably rightly so. Right. But it's it doesn't mean it's not a difficult time for guys.
Absolutely. There were a lot of questions about guys, and the confusion.
The confusion. I mean, it's like I say, the best way I can explain it, and I explain it, is it's like this weird sex addiction or drug addiction kicks in at this point in your life, where just all of a sudden you're used to worry about, pulling the legs off of lizards and blowing things up and stuff like that. And, young guys' minds are basically sex, food, and explosions in random order. The sex part kind of takes over.
Right. So more information, balanced information, highly advocated. There's the terms that I didn't know. Camel toe I actually knew about. So when I saw that question, but I wrote it down somewhere. Is it skeet?
Skeet is a slang term for semen.
Okay.
That was new to me at that time too.
The question: why is it so hard to get semen out of hair, and why is skeet so sticky? I'm saying this, one, because it's kind of funny, but two, because kids do want to know. And if we continue to say, I'm not comfortable with kids learning sex education at school. I get that. When I was first asked that question, I was like, and my kids don't want to take the class at all. But and then I do have talks with other moms, and I have two teenage girls. You all know that, 16 and 14, beautiful, and they would say, it doesn't belong to be talked about in school. It should be talked about at home. And then I'll follow up with the question: do you talk about it at home?
You ready to sit down and talk with me about it, kids?
No. So again, if we don't talk about it, we're letting porn educate our children.
Yeah. And I find, reading between the lines a lot of cases, but a lot of parents are inordinately grateful that we do this. Thank God you're doing it, so I don't have to, at least not in that detail.
Right.
The kids, I mean, you can see them all year. They'll ask all year, when are we doing family life? When are we doing family life? And you get different reactions. The ones that are horrified with it and immediately start hiding their face, and the other ones are just sitting there quivering in anticipation. Which is what you would expect.
Right. And my kids, God bless them. They're like, Mom, can we get through one dinner without you using the word vagina? So
Yay,
there's
Mom.
an overkill. There is an overkill, and I did it, and I copped to that. But again, I think there's a a process. There's an easy way. I think again, if we can also put it in the context, it's so important to talk about orgasms. It's so important to talk about pleasure. It's so important to talk about love and pleasure. It's so important to talk about when you feel emotionally ready to do it. When a guy says, I love you and I want you, what does that mean? Go ahead.
Well, one of my favorite, there were two questions in there that you probably saw that, what do you do when you're with somebody you really like and they're ready to they want to have sex with you, but you don't feel you're ready? And if there's a universal question, probably for young girls in their first romance, that's probably it.
Yeah.
And my answer was, you answered the question yourself. You're not ready.
Right.
Okay. And
Right.
that should be the end of the discussion.
Right.
And it's hard for a guy not to put pressure on a girl that he cares about.
Right.
Because, like I say, it's just literally vibrating through every fiber of your body at that age if you're a guy.
Right.
But somehow you've got to respect that.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hear the music. That reminds me to thank our sponsor today. And we'll just jump right into that.
How do you prepare a young teen for the sexual culture they're growing up in today? Science teacher Dave Beck's hilarious and harrowing book, They Asked You What?, does just that. It gives the student, their parents, and teachers the knowledge and tools to deal with the reality of today's overwhelmingly sexual American culture. And it's a great, fun, thoughtful read. Read it yourself. Give it to your teen and/or their teachers. Available for Kindle download and softcover purchase at Amazon.com.
And we're back. You can purchase this fabulous book that we've been talking about by David Beck, They Asked You What? And because they call me the Asian Oprah, we are giving away a free copy. I'm not up to the cars yet, but here's a free copy that David so kindly. So the first person to get online right now, go to forbalance.org, sign the guest book entry, and say, I want David Beck's free book. So we'll get that to you. So, let's see, what else did I want to ask you? We've covered quite a bit. Oh, just some of the questions that are asked. I saw one that was very disturbing that said, I have AIDS and I have not told my girlfriend.
Yeah, that one shook me up too. And every year this happens to me. We go through the unit and I go through the questions, stuff like that. And we get to the end of the unit, the end of the school year and things like that. And I go through and, start clearing out the question box that's there on the counter and sorting out things, see if there's things I want for future editions or things. And I always run across a couple questions I didn't get to.
Right.
And this was one of those questions. And I so regret that.
Right.
I have no idea if it was a hypothetical or if it was really the case. But if you read my answer in the book, there's so many layers of wrong there.
Right.
And you don't like to jump on somebody, but that's a real problem. First, it's a legal issue in California to knowingly have sex with somebody when you have AIDS and not tell them, especially unprotected sex.
Right.
Where that plays out with somebody who's underage, I'm not sure, but nevertheless, it's a serious legal, ethical thing.
Yeah.
And you simply have to tell them.
Right.
Right. You have to tell anybody they've been in contact with sexually. And, that was a very disturbing question.
Right. And it brings to the forefront again.
Yeah, you've got 14-year-olds dealing with that.
14-year-old kids. There's more and more it's not sex in high school anymore. It's sex in middle school. I heard that years ago. So they're starting younger. If they're starting younger, and again, they're not prepared for the responsibility, nor do they understand the context of what sex is, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble as a culture. So when the kids are listening to the pressure, they're listening to their friends, and they come to you as a teacher and they say, what do I do? What's the best approach?
Best approach is to remind them that in their heart of hearts, they already know, and access that part of their being that, you know right from wrong. You also know the truth of what's right for you. All right. And I go back to the basic theme of the book. This is the world you live in. You have to take care of yourself in terms of birth control. You have to take care of yourself in terms of preventing sexually transmitted disease. You have to do that anytime you have sex of any kind, whether it's oral, vaginal, anal, whatever, because they're doing all of those things.
Right.
And if you're not ready to deal with that, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
The most mature decision is then to realize, okay, I'm probably not ready for this.
Right.
But if you think you are ready for this, you better be taking care of those things every single time you have sex.
Right.
And a lot of adults don't get that right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things in the world. By the time you're 10 or 12 years old, you can probably drive a car physically. But I ask them, do you want to be on the road with a bunch of your 10 or 12-year-old friends driving cars?
It's a good analogy.
We are physically able to do a lot of things in life before we really ought to do them.
Yeah, and the whole, taking the morality out, taking the judgment out, I think is critical. So
and the feeling that I'm sure a lot of parents have is it hypocritical to tell them all this stuff and then tell them to hold off and not have sex.
Yeah.
And study after study shows that if you get real-world sex education, there's way less of all these things we worry about. There's some of the statistics I quote there in the appendix where they study sexually transmitted disease and pregnancy rates in Northern Europe, countries like France, Scandinavia, Germany, Italy, all of which have very straightforward sex education from a very young age. Those rates are fractions of what it is in the United States and England, which is also very similar to United States in its approach.
Exactly. And in the dark, you'll get infection. That's, if you put light to it, there's no more infection.
Yeah.
So that's the argument or the
Again,
advocation.
if you hate all these bad things that you connect with sex, then you should embrace real-world sex education.
And balance it out with the pleasure and the importance, and masturbation is something that I talk about
it's
openly
a good
on
option.
the show.
It's one of the startling things that that arose as I was going through this, is you get a question, how do girls masturbate?
Right.
And you try to avoid the how to do it thing, but you say, look, guys rub their penises, girls rub their clitoris.
Right.
And about half the girls are looking around each other, and the guys, what's a clitoris? And that startled me to realize in this age, in this sexually overwhelming culture, there's still a lot of girls that don't realize they've got that or what to do with it.
Right. And boys and men who don't know how to
deal with it when it's presented to them.
Exactly. Pleasure education is my next project, because guys do want to make girls happy and they don't know how to do it. Girls don't know how to make themselves happy. So
sex for a lot of girls at this age is mostly what guys do to them and what they do for guys.
That's really never heard of that before. and it seems to continue. We are doing a little shift. I think the fact that we are
moving our demographic a little older right here.
Yeah, definitely. Any last words of advice to? Oh, and I know you have a lot of your student fans that are watching. I had some messages. Absolutely. So you did cover the AIDS question that you didn't get to do in class. So that's done. I think we're going to be on the Press Telegram on Sunday, which is good, where we need this out. I would put this beside my Joy of Sex book to balance out the things, and it is very know how to, very factual. Knowing you as I do, you have a great sense of humor. I can't even imagine the 5 different responses you did before you did
Oh yeah.
This
Some of those are pretty verbatim what I said, but like I say in the forward, I get to do do-overs on this.
Yeah, yeah. You can do another version of it.
The one about the girl in Saturday school. It still.
Which one's that?
What's a queef?
Yes. So what's a queef?
Okay, so you get that question, and I go through and answer it.
I don't know what a queef is.
It's a vaginal fart.
Okay. I learned something new today on the show.
Gets in there, and so one of the things that you do in middle school is you have Saturday school, which is basically detention on Saturday. All right, so you sign up for that as a teacher, and it's a chance to get paid for doing some teacher things while you supervise some kids that got themselves in trouble.
Right.
And usually it's 80% guys, at middle school age, and there's maybe 1 or 2 girls that continually violate dress code or got busted for academic violations and things like that. So I'm doing this one Saturday, and I'm sitting there grading papers and things like that. And luckily, there was not the normal dozen kids in there. There's this one little troublesome redheaded 7th grade girl who was always in trouble for her mouth or for dress code violation stuff. There's one other very good girl student that got caught on something dumb and was there, and some poor brain dead slacker in the back of the room. So I'm just sitting and grading papers and stuff like that. And this little redheaded hottie who's always in trouble giggles in the back of the room. So I look up sternly, with my teacher face on, and says, because you're not supposed to do anything.
Breakfast Club face.
Yeah, right. He says, that's enough of that. And, what's going on? And she looks at me with this bright smile and Mr. Beck, I just made a queef. I can do it on purpose with my muscles. Do you want to hear me do another one?
Oh, my goodness.
So all of a sudden, I'm thinking, oh, God, here's the end of my career. I'm having this completely inappropriate sexual conversation with a 13-year-old. Right? And, like I say, I'm pretty well known for having a good comeback. I'm famous for it at school.
Yes.
I just...
had nothing.
Just my mouth, I look like a fish.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. And I knew what a queef was, and I told my wife about this when I go home, and she slapped me up the side of the head. You idiot, you know what a queef is, and stuff like that. You shouldn't have fallen into that. But it just took me completely by surprise, deer in the headlights. Yeah. And I finally mumbled something about get back to work. We'll have no more discussion of that. You'll be here for the next 3 weeks, And luckily, that's all that came of it.
Right, right. And repeating what you said in the beginning, whether we want to believe that our kids are talking about it, whether we want to believe that they're thinking about it, whether we want to believe they're looking at porn to learn from it, it's happening. And so if it's happening, it is important for us to, I threaten my kids actually to go through this like a book club. But this question I think is, does it always hurt? So this is a girl that asked this question. Does it always hurt when a girl loses her virginity? And why does it hurt the first time for a girl? My heart just goes, I would love to be the one that talked about this with my daughter and not, but most of us are uncomfortable to say that. We just say don't do it. So now this is your challenge, all my listeners who have teenagers, first get the book and read through the book and get educated, and then start, we don't have to jump in it. We can say, wherever you're getting your education right now, I'd like to just add to it from my perspective. I'm happily divorced. So I'm not in a traditional, so for me, I have to talk to them about relationships and what works and what doesn't work and why you would have a divorce. I think it's just as important, sex, what works, what doesn't. I talk about my past experiences and how I didn't have good experiences, and so how I want them to have good experiences. And these are the important things to think about before you have it.
Right.
Have them go to sex education.
Yeah.
Have them.
There's a lot of good options out there nowadays.
Yeah.
The Talk the Talk private program is very good. And, there's some good sources online, shows like this, the Scarlet Teen website, Dr. Drew's site often has a lot of good things. So there are certainly excellent resources out there, but there's a shocking amount of people not getting access to those resources, and the questions I see year after year, and the things that come back to me from young people I talk to. It's it's sometimes things, the more they change, the more they remain the same.
Right.
We're immersed in this culture, and yet we're treating each other in ways that are right out of Mad Men.
Yeah, exactly. So, did you talk to your daughters about?
Our family was probably traditional enough that Mom got more of that. Franny did a lot more of that than I did with them, and it partly was there's no way they were going to talk to Dad about that.
Right.
And and it also, you have to say, it depends a lot on the kid's personality. Our older daughter absolutely would not discuss any aspect of her sex life ever with us, and still largely won't. The younger daughter, everything that happened to her, she had long, detailed discussions with Fran about. So they both were very smart about protecting and taking care of themselves. So we did a good job that way, but they're different people.
So shout outs to your daughters. Do you want to say anything?
To Fran, my wonderful wife who helped me write this, to Natasha, and to Nicole. Amazing young women, and again, like I say in the book, they're really a credit to Fran as a mother more than me as a dad.
Oh,
right.
Well, I think it was a joint effort, but thank you so much for being a guest on this show.
It's been a wonderful experience.
Good, I'm glad. This is your first taped or first camera radio that you can actually see.
First time with cans and a microphone.
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you so much, David Beck. Teacher, educator, author, my kid's favorite science teacher. We've had a great time here. I'm hoping that my listeners will take the challenge and go out and do a little balancing talk with their kids. It is time at the end of the show for my balance bar announcements. So please do step up, and where you get a menu of what I offer first. I did give the book away, so I'm not going to do that anymore. I am going to play a little something of where I'm going to be this weekend, and I hope you will join me.
Don't miss the Rhythm and Joy Music Festival on Saturday, August 30th from 11 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Warner Center Park in Woodland Hills. It's a day-long soulful celebration of music, art, and fun. Bring your family and enjoy A-list performances, parades, drum circles, great food, and more. Free your rhythm and your joy will follow. RAJ Festival is the place to be. For more information, go to www.rajfestival.com.
All right, that is where I will be this Saturday. You will have to come and join me. I did come out of retirement. I was a retired lounge lizard, and then I came out of retirement to join the Agape International Choir, who will be headlining at that Raj Festival. So please come and play with me on Saturday. Also, please save the date. Celebrating the International Day of Peace. We're turning over a new piece. September 20th, I will be teaching Balance Tai Chi Gong, my moving meditation that promotes inner peace, one breath at a time. In October, I'll be speaking at the AWE Awards Luncheon, where someone's giving me a Lotus Award Business Person of the Year. Thank you. My second award in 1 week for my birthday, which is lovely. This is what happens when you wake up every morning with an impending sense of good. In November, I will be keynoting at the Make It in America conference, and I just found out who I will be sharing the stage with, Woody Harrelson. So that's going to be fun. I'm teaching in Hawaii also in November, doing some balanced Tai Chi Gong and also speaking at some corporations. I'd love for you to come and celebrate my other award that I talked about last week, which is the Best in Entrepreneurship from the Asian Heritage Society at the California Performing Arts Center in Escondido. There are tables that have my name on it, so I would love you to come and celebrate with me. That's November 22nd. And are you turning people off with your complaining? Well, then your makeover starts September 1st for round 39 of the 21-day Fast from Complaining with Dr. Marissa. So please do join that. Shout out or peace out or love out to Heather O'Donnell, who actually said that the fast helped her out a lot and that she's been following. And so, hi, Heather. And you can register again at www.4balance.org and also find out details on how to find me. So that's it for this week. Next week, it's another call-in show. So that's when Dr. Marissa, the kinder, gentler Dr. Laura, gets to play on the air with people who want their BS, their belief systems, smog checked that are not working for them and balance their life tires. So please do contact my assistant producer Jarvis on my website to get scheduled. Since I am the kinder, gentler Dr. Laura, I'm not going to make you wait on hold. We'll give you a specific time, both on Tuesday at UBN and Thursday at my NBC News Radio KCAA AM 1050 station. So, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa Pay. That's P for positive, EI. And remember, it's all about balance. Peace in and peace out.